Thank you so much. I came to this festival today with 4 things in my pockets. 1 pack of Marlboro cigarettes, an IQOS, which is an e-cigarette, my phone, and my wallet, which is my money. So these are the 4 biggest addictions of my life, and none of these are considered stigmatized in our society today. So I think that's also an interesting question. Before we start talking about that, tying in technology to our conversation today, let me shortly introduce our panel. Dr. Veronika Konok is a co-founder and leading psychologist of the Alpha Generation Lab at ELTE that is researching how the use of digital devices affect children's development. Her research specifies on the role of information and communication technologies in human behavior. Dr. Levente Móró is a psychedelic community activist, a drug policy reform advocate who has obtained his PhD in the Center of Cognitive Neuroscience at the University of Turku in Finland. He studies the topic of altered states of consciousness and psychoactive drugs, and his special areas of interest are psychedelic drugs and new psychoactive substances, peer help harm reduction, and psychedelic crisis intervention at parties and festivals. And of course, you've heard Johann. He's a London-based writer and journalist, the author of 3 New York Times best-selling books. He has written for world-leading newspapers such as the New York Times, Le Monde, The Guardian. His TED Talks have been viewed more than 70 million times, and his work has been praised all over the world. So thank you so much for joining us. I plan around a 40-minute long conversation and then open up the floor for questions, so prepare your questions. My first question is connecting to your excellent presentation, Johann. You said the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think it ties beautifully into our topic about technology, because technology tells us that it's connecting us. So who's lying?
Yeah, I went to the world's first ever rehab center for people who are addicted to the internet. It's in Washington State in the US. And I'll never forget, I got out the car, it's in the woods, and the first thing I did was totally without thinking, I looked at my phone and was really pissed off I didn't have any Wi-Fi or cell phone reception. I was like, oh wait, you came to the right place. And they get loads of people who come to this rehab center, but they disproportionately get young men who've become obsessed with online role-playing games. At the time it was World of Warcraft, but it'd be Fortnite now, and pornography. And I spoke to loads of these young men, and it was so interesting because I remember afterwards, the woman who runs it, Dr. Hilary Cash, she said to me, you've got to ask yourself, what do these young men get out of these games, right? They're getting something out of it that they're not, that they used to get from the society, right? We've got a crisis of young men for all sorts of reasons. So what do they get from these games, these games they're playing obsessively? They get a sense that they're good at something. We have a school system that in particular makes boys feel they're dumb, they're not good at anything. They get a sense they're physically moving around, like young men basically don't leave the house, if you look at figures. They get a sense that other people see them, right? This is the loneliest society in human history. At least on these games, someone is seeing you. But what you're getting is kind of like a parody of those things. You know, I don't think it's a coincidence that they're obsessed with pornography as well, because I think it was Dr. Cash who said to me, we all have an innate need for sexual activity in the same way that we have a need for like social connection. And pornography sort of meets that need for sexual connection, but not really. It leaves you feeling, I'm not anti-porn, but like if it's your entire sex life, it leaves you, unfulfilled, right? In the same way, I'm not against online role-playing games or whatever, but they're getting you close to your need, but they're not meeting your need, right? So there are lots of great things about the internet, clearly, but we did not evolve for screen-based interactions, right? If screen-based interactions met our deepest needs as human beings, the pandemic would have been fine. We all had Zoom, right? I never once in the entire pandemic ever heard anyone say the sentence, hooray, another Zoom call, right? Because that doesn't meet our deepest needs, right? We have needs for 3D interaction. We could be having this conversation on Zoom. I wouldn't feel like you saw me, and you wouldn't feel like we were seeing each other, right? This is a different experience to watching us on YouTube, right? I can see you nodding. I can see people being pissed off when I'm saying things they don't agree with. It's a completely... Interacting in 3 dimensions is very different.
So the conversation on being addicted to technology is growing, but still we don't stigmatize it, we don't criminalize it, obviously, but we do that with drugs. So I wonder, Levente, what makes us recognize addiction as a society? Where do we draw the line? Why don't we stigmatize coffee or cigarettes, for that matter? Why don't we stigmatize screens and technology, but why do we stigmatize drugs? Where is the line in that level of addiction?
Well, I think that societies are working with a power structure which controls things and tries to control everything in the worst case. And these are just historical layers when at some points in time, some, say, substances, psychoactive substances just appeared, and then societies took different routes of controlling those. So we should take into account that what substances will not be mentioned here when we talk about drugs. So this is the story of like first, well, alcohol, which is the basis of Western society as we know it, since the distillation of liquors, because people knew some other forms of beer and wine before, but the distillation to make hard liquors, that was something change in the Middle Ages. Sorry, not by the Brits with the gin, but it was the Dutch with the Jenever. So. And maybe the Chinese before that. So hard liquors just made a very big impression on society and its availability. And basically the same things with the nicotine. It's like how big thing was that when they discovered the American continent and they just found a new plant that makes you high. And obviously the Native Americans didn't smoke like 70 cigarettes a day or not even a pack of cigarettes, because it was ritual and ceremonial use. And we won't be talking about the pharmaceutical drugs, which are also like a huge industry of some of them psychoactives, and we just tend to exclude them when we are talking about drugs, as well with caffeine. I wonder how many of you are hooked on caffeine, like daily users, and you don't think it as an addiction, because society doesn't give that impression to you that it has anything wrong to be hooked on something that you use daily, probably. So I guess it's also the industrial and economical interests behind all of these. As there was Johann's excellent presentation about or talk about how the mafia took this old drug war. So they just took a huge area of psychoactives and made it their business. And the states did the same with alcohol or nicotine. Most in many countries, like in Hungary, tobacco is a state monopoly since like 150 years, and so on and so on. So there's it's always the power structures and the corruption and the economical interests of industrial groups and investors to make huge profits. So it doesn't have to do that many things with like health issues, for instance. And if the state can't make money out of something, then it bans and it pushes to some other groups, and then maybe gets some interest in forms of bribe money or whatever. So I guess it's very complicated, and each substance had a different history.
So my mom has been a teacher of Hungarian language and literature for the past 38 years. And in the past few years, she's been crying to me about how the kids are changing, and she's stomping her feet and saying, well, these are not the same kids as 10 years ago. And I always tell her, Mom, 4 more years until you retire, which I think is, she needs that. But is it true? Is it true when we say our kids are addicted to technology, Vera? Because you work a lot with children. Is this the right terminology even to use?
Well, so the experience of teachers or any professionals who work with children shows that. So a lot of people say to us that they see the same things. For example, so language professionals, or I don't know, who help children to develop their language skills, say that in the past 10 or 20 years, they have a huge experience. Children's language skills and attention dramatically decreased. But the research is lag behind these experiences, so we have still very few data, and of course we don't know the long-term effects, because the generation who use these devices from their early childhood still not adults or almost adults. But for example, in case of the TV, we know much more, because it's an older media, and we know that it can have bad effects on children if they watch TV in their first 2 or 3 years. I mean, if they watch a lot of TV, then the chance of having language problems, attention problems, and etc. Becomes more frequent. Yes, but you asked addiction, so there are very few research on children's addiction to technology. It's much more research regarding adults and adolescents. But those few studies show that there is such a thing, and around 5 to 10% of the children show something like addiction. But so there are many terms and many definitions. So it's not a clear thing what addiction, technology addiction means. So it's not such a standard diagnosis. For example, as in case of drug addictions or gambling. So somebody used the term problematic mobile phone use or problematic technology use. Somebody used the term addiction, and they specify it and define it totally. So not so the same. So it's not an exact thing, but there is something problematic use, and parents also often say that they cannot do anything anymore because their children don't want to do anything else, just play with the video games.
Yeah, and if it's so important what you just said, and if you want to look at the evidence that this has a degrading effect on us, as my friend Tristan Harris always says, we've upgraded technology and downgraded humanity. And if you want to know the effect of that, I'll give you an example of one that will be playing out for everyone here today, pretty much. If you're interrupted by something as simple as a text message, it takes you on average 23 minutes to get back to the level of focus you had before you were interrupted. It's from a study by Professor Michael Posner at the University of Oregon. So you've probably all got phones in your pocket. My phone is here, it's on airplane mode. So, you know, when anyone's speaking here, you might just think, I'll just glance at my phone for a second, right? It'll take, 3 seconds to read that text message. It'll take you 3 minutes plus the 23 minutes it takes you to fully refocus your mind. But most of us never get 23 minutes without being interrupted. And it's really important to understand, and I don't think I would have understood this until I wrote a book about this called Stolen Focus. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley interviewing the people who designed key aspects of the world in which we now live. This is happening by design. One of the things that's most striking when you talk to the people who invented the stuff we're using, the apps we're using in particular, is how sick with guilt they feel about what they've done. My friend James Williams was at the heart of designing Gmail. And one day, he was speaking at a conference where the audience are literally the people who designed the stuff your kids are going to use today. And he said to the audience, if there's anyone here who wants to live in the world that we're creating, please put up your hand. And nobody put up their hand, right? That's why he quit. And there's lots of reasons why, and I can go into it in more detail, but I won't give a long answer. But the technology we're using is designed to maximally hack and invade our attention, because every time you open these apps and begin to scroll, they begin to make money because you see advertising. The longer you scroll, the more money they make because you see more ads. So it is all this genius in Silicon Valley, all this AI, all these algorithms, when it's applied to social media, is designed to do one thing. It's designed to get you to open the app as often as possible and scroll as long as possible. That's it. Just like the head of KFC is a perfectly nice person, I'm sure, but all they care about is how often did you go to KFC this week and how big was the bucket of fried chicken you bought. All these social media companies care about is how much of your attention did we take today.
On the contrary, though, isn't the world is changing, and with that, the skills humans need are changing as well. My mom, we were just on vacation. We came back yesterday, and I told her on the phone, please send me your location on WhatsApp. And she called me and she said, I don't understand what do you want from me? And she acted just as confused as probably her students are when she asked them to analyze a poem from the 1700s. And I always tell her, listen, the way these kids are changing, the way the micro movement in their hands are developing, the way their heads, their minds are changing, is adapting to what is becoming more useful from humans.
Yeah, so I interviewed one of the leading neuroscientists in the world, Professor Earl Miller at MIT, and he said to me, look, there's one thing you need to understand about the human brain more than anything else. You can only consciously think about one or two things at a time. That's it. This is a fundamental limitation of the human brain. Human brain has not changed in 40,000 years. It ain't going to change on any time scale we're going to see. But what's happened is we've fallen for a mass delusion. The average teenager now believes they can follow 7 forms of media at the same time. The rest of us aren't far behind. So what scientists like Professor Miller do is they get people into labs, younger people and older people, and get them to think they're doing more than one thing at a time. And it turns out you can't do more than one thing at a time. What you do is you juggle really quickly. You're like, what did you just ask me? What is this message on WhatsApp? What does it say on the TV over there? What did you ask me again? And that juggling, the fancy term for it is the switch cost effect. That juggling comes with a really big cost. You remember less of what you do, you're much less creative, you make more mistakes. And you're right, we can adapt to some degree, but we can only adapt within a quite narrow band. So kids are a little bit better at it than we are, but no matter how old you are and how much of this environment, you can't adapt to breathing underwater, and you can't adapt to rapid changing, rapidly switching without it coming with a really big cost.
Veronika, what do you see in your research regarding that?
Yes. So, for example, we did an interesting experiment in which we found that those children, preschoolers, who use mobile devices frequently, their attention is different from other children in the sense that they are more. They focus more on the details instead of the whole picture. So usually we, or in the past, people did that if they saw a picture or a scene, then first they pay attention to the whole picture and then we focus in the details. But it seems that using digital devices alter this way of attention, and we also found that after 10 minutes of playing with a tablet game, children also showed this detailed focus attention. And why I'm telling is that, for example, this is one difference in which we become adapted to the screens. We think that the explanation of this is that on the screens, usually, so there are many tiny details, but usually we can't see the whole picture because we have to scroll to get the whole picture, or in a game, our characters are going and always just a part of the whole thing can be seen. So we are adapting, and this difference might be not a problem, just a different thing that earlier people showed. It can have connections with other things, for example, thinking styles. For example, those people who are more attentive to the details are usually have more analytic thinking, while the others are more creative people or have more better social skills. So the generation who are growing up now might be different when they will be adult. For example, they might have different professions. But we don't know yet what kind of effects this will have in general. And there are other effects on attention, for example, which is definitely bad. What Johann said also, so that frequent switching between content it poses a load on the attention system, and there are many studies which show the connection between attention problems and the use of media, and these are longitudinal studies often, so they often show that if a child uses a lot of media in early childhood, then later they will have more problems with attention or maybe even ADHD, attention and hyperactivity disorder.
So about a few months ago, there was a trend on TikTok that young people were changing their smartphones to flip phones, or we call them in Hungarian buta telefon. And then they were posting about it on TikTok with their smartphones. So I was confused at the whole concept, and I think most of them lost interest in that within a few weeks. So it's unrealistic for this generation to give up social media or screens or our smartphones. So Levente, where do we draw the line when we talk about addiction? Where does it become harmful? Also in drugs, but also in technology, what is the scientific point when we can say for sure this is a bad sort of addiction?
Well, I guess it's very hard to predict if those kids would need those skills, because I think concentration is a good skill to have. So there wouldn't be any problem if those kids would learn how to concentrate, and then when they will need it in maybe some future jobs will have concentration as a requirement. But it's also very good to process a lot of information from different contexts. Like the TikTok example is that you will see some context, and then in like less than a second you decide on your impressions of whatever colors and faces and how they dance or something, if you will like it or not, and if you not, then you will make a decision in 1 second or a couple of seconds to switch it to another totally different context, a totally different person from a totally different part of the world doing something totally different from the previous one, and then you do this endless stream, which is really endless, and you switch the contexts like every second or 2 seconds, and maybe you start watching it, but then if it's too boring, which you decide in a couple of seconds, then you switch to the next one. So this is, of course, it's a very lot of context switching. You have to grab the idea that what it might be before it started actually, and that's also a good skill to process information, but I'm not sure that if it's very beneficial in any kind of future job that is imaginable. Although I don't know what the future jobs will be, because there is this generation who grew up by watching TV, and then the next generation grew up using the videotapes, and they were repeatedly watching the same, I don't know, Disney movies. And then there's the new generation who grew up with a smartphone and online internet all the time. And maybe the next generation will be the one who will grow up with an AI in their smartphone, so they actually don't need to ask anything from another person, because the AI will be always there. You just ask the AI knows you, the AI knows everything you do, and the AI even will provide you with a stream, because knows all your habits from all your life that is digital now. So it's a question that will you actually need any kind of skills outside the digital domain, because the AI will be, as an assistant, it will be always with you as long as there's an internet connection and a smartphone. So I wonder that what these people who were, or kids who were born in the, kids, in the 21st century, that what kind of jobs will be there for which they would need concentration. I guess there's something like a surgeon's job. You can't actually answer SMS messages while you're doing something like a 10-hour surgery, obviously. But it's still very open. I guess the harmful, to go back to the original question, harmfulness is when you are not adaptive enough to switch from this kind of high band information processing, when you can't switch to some concentration, can't get into the flow because of the fear of missing out any kind of things that happening in your social network, because the social network is something which is fostering of also the not only communication but consumption, as it was said, that it's designed that you will see what people around you are doing at the moment. It's kind of like living other people's lives to a big extent.
I'm a bit more pessimistic than you. I would say, although I think you put it really well. So I would say to everyone here, just think about anything you've ever achieved in your life that you're proud of. Whether it's starting a business, being a good parent, learning to play the guitar, whatever it is, right? That thing that you're proud of required a lot of sustained attention and focus. Sustained attention is the heart of all human achievement. We're in the middle of the Olympics, right? Every Olympian, my God, they had to dedicate their lives to that. The sustained attention it took, right? Attention is our superpower as a species. And the evidence is clear that when your ability to pay attention, as you're describing, when it deteriorates, your ability to achieve your goals deteriorates. Your ability to solve your problems deteriorates. You feel worse about yourself when you can't pay attention because you actually are less competent when you can't pay attention. So I think the fact that the environment in which we live is degrading our attention in lots of ways, not just through our technology. There's 12 factors that are undermining our attention and focus that I write about in my book, Stolen Focus, but it is undermining human achievement. Our kids will achieve, they won't die, they'll be okay, but they'll achieve less, there'll be less in their lives than they could have been. And I think it's especially important that you relate it to AI, because what these machines do is you're right about adaptation, we adapt so we become more like the machine, we're more able to do these fragmented things. But actually, the thing we need our kids to do is the stuff that AI can't do, right? AI can't be very creative. It can't be very empathetic, right? And I don't think it ever will be based on the current large language models. But actually, if it degrades our attention, well, try being empathetic if you can't listen to people, right? Try being creative if you can't sustain your thought, right? So actually, I think it's really important that we fix this in ways that the people in Silicon Valley are warning we need to.
Johann, how do you see the conversation about addiction evolving in our societies? Is there still a taboo around the whole issue? Is it sexier now to admit that we are addicted to our smartphones? I see a lot of content on screen addiction on my screen, on my phone. I see a lot of content on procrastination while I should be doing something else. So it seems to me that it's becoming a hot topic. Is it anything similar to drug addiction and the taboo around that?
No, it's not like, I don't actually think the addiction language is that helpful around screens, because I think it's too clouded with loads of other stuff. Interestingly, addiction is less taboo. Actually, there's a much bigger taboo around recreational drug use in Hungary than there is around addiction. Most people are a bit compassionate to addicts. Actually, there's more, Oscar Wilde said that Puritanism is the fear that someone somewhere is having fun. And there's actually more fear about drug use, I think. I think people would be angrier at someone who's using ecstasy to dance here than they would at an addicted person living in the gutter, actually. So that's an interesting, weird thing. But yeah, I think the taboo on addiction is declining in the West to some degree, not as much here as in Britain or the US, but to some degree. But yeah, I don't think addiction is that helpful as a paradigm to think about technology. The more important thing is to say, we've all got a problem with attention. Some of that problem is because this technology is designed to do that, and we need to regulate that industry in targeted ways to minimize them doing that to us.
It's a very interesting thought that it's a kind of like a fear of missing out from the prohibition, is that they are missing out something which gives other people either pleasure or something like functional enhancement or whatever, and it kind of triggers some kind of aggression that if I don't do it because of my ideology or whatever needs, then I don't would allow any other people to do. So it's kind of it's the what was this British pop band that had this line, is where were you while we were getting high? It's the thing that some people are just strict because they don't like that other people can have something more than them, and they have some kind of innate fear not to have that thing. Yeah.
So when
I've got that song in my head now. Sorry. Where were you? Sorry. Oasis, the best. Objectively the best British band. Sorry. After the Beatles, obviously.
When I was a child, and it seems like my mom is the center of this conversation.
Where is she? Bring her out.
She's not here.
Oh.
I love her. But when I was a teenager, she always used to ask me, what is it that you do on your computer? Back then we had laptops, and I had a laptop. She was always asking me, okay, what do you do for 4 hours? And I could never tell her, and I really couldn't. I was trying, but I couldn't explain what I was doing because the virtual space sort of became my natural environment, and it became part of my life. So I was just doing whatever I was doing in my room or in my city or whatever. What is the biggest obstacle in the conversation between parents and their children that you see in your work? Because that's what I see so often. There is no trust between the parent and the child when they talk about what they do or how they use social media or their technology in general. What do you see?
Well, this is more relevant to adolescents, but we mainly focus on smaller children. In this case, this is not a problem because parents usually know what the child is doing in the better cases. But yeah, in adolescence, I think it's common. So it's typical in every other area, not just in connection with the digital activities, that adolescents don't like to tell the parents what they are doing. So I think it's kind of natural. But of course, if they have more intimate and trustful relationship, then the child will tell things to the parents. But it's also important that the parent would be interested in what the child is doing. So parents often think that, oh, these are stupid things, these games and social media, and they even don't understand or don't care. And it's important that the parent would be interested, so they can tell the child that, show me what kind of games you are playing with and what is the good in it, what you are enjoying. Maybe they can also try that games because then there will be some connections and maybe they will understand something from the child.
Yeah, this triggered me some memories when there are these video games or computer games since from the 1980s, and parents or adults don't understand that what is that you are just taking a joystick and you are just staring at the screen for hours. And it's one thing is that is a basic concept, I think, is that these are kind of virtual realities. So there are a certain context, And within that context, you get immersed into that context, be it a role play or some kind of an adventure game or action game or whatever. And then within that context, there's a small world, and then you can take control over the world, and you have a character or whatever which is moving in the world. Or actually, there's a coherent virtual world system, and then you can being immersed in it for many hours, and the outside world just stops being around you. And this is actually, in comparison, different with drugs, to go back to the main topic of the talk, because drugs are more like, according to some very nice research, they are just some functional tools. So drug use always has some function, and there's lots of research going into the intentions or purposes of drug use. I also authored one, and there are many different reasons why people use drugs. It could be something like just out of curiosity, out of just offsetting a deficiency, or just enhance power, or stamina, or just self-medication, or spiritual purposes, and so on and so on. So there's lots of reasons by different research, a different number of these drug use purposes, and there's this drug instrumentalization hypothesis, which says that you are using drugs because you want to enhance some function that you would do anyway. So if you your function is to go have a nice time and be kind of meet nice people and being socially more open, then you maybe choose alcohol as we see it. If you need some boost in your energy level, then maybe a cigarette will do with nicotine, or amphetamines, cocaine, or things that make you kind of stronger for some time. It's a reason why like people are chewing coca leaves in South America, and there's a reason why they use opium for pain killing and so on. So there's always a function that this drug enhances. And so this is something that you're not randomly using stuff. You always have a purpose, and then if you are smart enough, then you are choosing a certain drug to enhance that function that you would, which is your goal, that you would like to do even better. So this is, I guess, it's different from this video game or other immersion type of things, because outsiders wouldn't understand that well. Why are you immersing into a virtual reality like a game or whatever? But they might understand better that you just want to be better in what you usually do with the help of some kind of a chemical or psychoactive tool.
Yeah, just think about I know it's so interesting what both of you just said, but I actually think we need a completely different conversation between adults and kids. You're absolutely right. The conversation moment tends to be adults standing over children saying, there's something wrong with you, and I'm here to tell you what it is. That's not the question. What we should be saying is, we've got a shared challenge here. Your attention's getting worse and my attention's getting worse. We've got a shared enemy that is undermining our ability to focus and pay attention, undermining our ability to feel good, and we have to together come up with strategies, right? The kind of superior adult lecturing, there's nothing wrong with our children, there's something wrong with the environment in which our children are living, which is producing dysfunctional behaviors, right? Or suboptimal behaviors. So give you an example of just one that I think really helps to explain to kids. Like I said before, it's explained to me by people who worked at the heart of these apps. So, like I said, these apps are designed to do one thing, to get you to open them and scroll as long as possible. That's how they make money, right? So the algorithms are set up to just figure out what to show you next that will keep you scrolling, right? That's all they care about. They don't care what you look at, they just care that you keep scrolling, right? And for different people, it'll be different things, right? Think about how good TikTok is. You use it for an hour and you're like, how did it know I would like that video, right? How did it know I'd want to see that and that and that? It's incredibly good at that. So these algorithms are constantly scanning what you do to figure out what will keep you scrolling. And they bumped into an underlying psychological truth that's been known about human beings for a long time. It's called negativity bias. human beings will stare longer at things that make us angry and upset than we will at things that make us feel good. If you ever saw a car crash, you know what I mean, right? You stared longer at the car wreck than you did at the pretty flowers on the other side of the street, right? That's always been part of human nature. But when it becomes used by algorithms that learn you, what makes you angry, what makes you sad, what makes you happy, has a terrible effect. Picture two teenage girls who go to the same party and they leave and go home on the same bus. And they both open TikTok. And one of them does a video that says, "That was such a great party. We danced to Janelle Monáe all night. I loved it." The algorithm scans your language. It'll put that video in a few people's feeds. Now imagine the other girl opens TikTok and says, "Karen was an absolute skank at that party, and her boyfriend's an asshole, and I hate him," and just angrily rants about everyone at the party. It's going to put that video in far more people's feeds, because if it makes you angry, you're going to stare at it longer. You're going to go, "What do you mean Karen's a skank? You're a skank. You're an asshole." It creates a chain, right, of attention. I'd like to think you think what I'm saying is interesting, but if someone over there started having a fist fight, we would all turn and look at that person, right? So this dynamic, this negativity bias, kind people, good people are muffled, they're pushed to the back. Angry, mean people are pushed to the front. That dynamic is making teenage girls in particular really anxious, right? Really unhappy. Talking about that dynamic, do you want your mind poisoned by this? Do you want your perception of reality distorted in this way? Or should we together come up with strategies? Because that's happening to you, it's happening to me, it's happening to our kids. How do we resist that together is a very different kind of conversation to, "I'm here to tell you what's wrong with you." That's not wrong with you, that's someone who screwed you over.
This negativity bias would make sense in an environment where you share with others, and if there's something like an accident, then you should know that there are bad things happening around you, and then you can make some sense how to avoid them and so on. And if there's some danger, it's like why people, when they see some, I don't know, blood, then they automatically go farther away, because it could have been that there was like a wild beast was biting someone, and then it's better to go farther away from in the physical space. But one thing that is echoing in my mind, not the Oasis thing, is that you said about achievement, that achievement always needs a concentration or attention, a sustained attention. And this is the basic question that, so what do you gain by getting a lot of information from your social networks actors that you would need tomorrow or the next day or permanently? And basically, I guess, like in 99%, nothing. So there's no point of following what happens to your tens or hundreds of friends on that particular day, what they ate for breakfast, who they had sex with or broke up with, or whatever else, who said what to whom and how he or she reacted. So there's like 99% of this stuff is really junk, and you are just getting the information, you are using the dopamine, but you won't gain anything on the long run out of the like 99% of whatever you do. Maybe there are some little bits of information, but basically it's like useless junk from the social network. I guess we identify to a great extent this digital mobile phone using with the social network using, and like apart from them, I guess there's like news addiction and I don't know, some other forms of online addictions or offline addictions. I don't know, maybe offline games. It's not like, but it's more like online and social networking. And I guess this is the junk input for a very great extent.
I just want to say that women are usually, so those women who are addicted to their smartphones or any digital media, they usually are addicted to social media. So for them is the most frequent activity.
Oh, I think it's still working. Oh, do you want to maybe take his?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. So just a final round of questions before we open up to your questions. Veronika, what do you think is the best way to equip our youth against the dangers of technology. And I love what Levente said about purpose, and by knowing the purpose of what we are using, we already take a step in acknowledging the reasons we are using that tool, but how do we make our children not abuse those tools?
Yes, so obviously in case of small children, parents have the responsibility, and there are many advices that we can tell them based on research. For example, parental mediation means that parents are present when the child is using digital media, and the child can ask questions, or they talk about the cartoon or the video that the child has seen. So research showed that parental mediation decreases the negative effects of digital media use, and sometimes it even has positive effects. So this is one thing, and the other is that, of course, parents are role models, so what they show in front of the children has an effect on the children. For example, we found in a study that those parents who are attached to their mobile phones, so they are kind of dependent, more dependent emotionally on their phones, have children who use digital devices more. So they are a role model, and they should pay attention what kind of content the children use, because not all contents are bad, of course. So the worst are the violent, aggressive contents, and then the mere educational content, and the entertaining content, and the best are usually the educational content. And there are also digital solutions, for example, parental control devices or applications with which, for example, parents can set time limit on the usage. These are just some help for the parents, but it's good if they can have a conversation about these rules, and that the child will understand that it's important that now I have only half an hour to play. And of course, in the first, let's say, 2 years of the life, even the World Health Organization says that no screen at all. It's important to the child don't use any screens. And back to the technological solutions. So our research group also developing a mobile application package. It's called AFI, which aim is to get back the balance between the online and offline activities and life of the child. So this application has many games in it, but some of these games facilitate the child to play something together with the parents or siblings, and, for example, go out into the nature or in the garden at least. And there are, for example, there is a board game in which the board is on the screen, but the tasks which they should do are such tasks for which the family should do something together. For example, go out and find a bird and take a photo of it and download it to the application. So we try to catch the attention of the child and turn it towards outside, and change the passive usage of digital devices to a more active and more social activities, because this is an important thing that, for example, compared to TV, the usage of these new smart devices is more frequently lonely activity. And these young children, so it's very important for them, for the optimal development, to have enough social interactions, and the device use often takes time away from this.
It's interesting when we are talking about these digital addictions, then we always see it as a parent's role. But this is not the case with drugs or sex, for that instance. So I would like to make a audience question, then we can call it a workshop because it's interactive. So how I guess you're not the age that your parents were kind of limiting your digital addictions to that extent, or is there anyone who got some practical hints and tips for managing digital addiction in their childhood? I guess so. Is there anyone who got useful tips, hints and tips for practical drug use from their parents? And who got these practical tips from their peer group, friends, schoolmates? Okay, so this looks like it's not the domain. And who got practical hints and tips from parents about sex? Oh, so was it the school? You got practical hints and tips for sex from school education? No. And what about friends and peer groups? And maybe the internet? Okay, I guess internet wins. So this is a very big difference in these things. Drugs are taboo in most countries. Sex is kind of looks like, because it's not something that a parent would kind of from generation to generation give the hints and tips that how to be good at that thing, and obviously it's not the case with drugs either. So I guess it's again, to go back to the first question, that how society handles totally differently these different types of potentially addictive things, because like sex could be also addictive in some vulnerable groups, which are also like this, maybe the 10% minority, I guess, as with drugs.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about your question, because the way you phrased it is the way it's normally phrased. So it's not a criticism of you, but I think it's the wrong way to phrase it. You said, how do we not make our children abuse these tools, right? Which I totally understand where you're coming from. And that's completely the wrong issue. Our children are not abusing these tools. Our children are being abused by these tools, right? These tools are designed to hack and addict children. I met the people who designed them to hack and addict our children, right? So the idea that that's a fault of the child, you know, I mentioned my mother being a smoker. There's a photograph of my mother smoking when she's 11 years old. In Scotland, when she was 11, it was completely normal. Maybe not completely normal, but it was not shocking for an 11-year-old to smoke cigarettes, right? That wasn't my mother abusing cigarettes. That was the tobacco industry abusing my mother, right? And in the same way, if we frame it as how do we stop our kids abusing this, of course that's an important conversation. Everything you said is true and important. But to me, that's a layer of the conversation. But to me, the most important layer of the conversation is how do we stop these fuckers doing this to our kids, right? And there's a really good analogy in the history of Hungary. So most of you are a bit too young to remember this, but it used to be the only kind of petrol you could buy in this country was leaded petrol, right? And it was discovered that exposure to lead is really bad for your brain, and particularly bad for children's ability to focus. And if it's in the petrol, it was in the fumes, everyone was breathing in a shitload of lead, right? So what happened? A group of ordinary mothers banded together and said, why are we allowing the lead industry to screw up our kids, right? And they didn't say, so let's ban cars, let's all go back to horse and cart, right? Just like none of us are saying, let's ban technology. This isn't a pro or anti-tech debate. We're all pro some technology. What they said was, let's get rid of the leaded petrol that screws our kids up and replace it with a kind of petrol that doesn't screw our kids up. And it was a big fight. It followed the classic pattern of all political movements that was described by Mahatma Gandhi. First they ignored them, then they laughed at them, then they fought them, then they won. There's no more leaded petrol in this country. As a result, the average Hungarian child is 5 IQ points higher than they would have been. Now, for me, the question is, how do we regulate these platforms and these forms of social media to stop them screwing up our kids? For children, I think it's really simple. We should ban social media for children under the age of 16. Just ban it. It's not right. We don't let them smoke. This technology is so bad for them. But also for over 16s, for us, for adults, there's all sorts of ways we can regulate it to make it less invasive on our technology and more beneficial for our mental health. Obviously, I write about this in my book. But to me, that's the most important layer of the conversation, not, oh, what are our kids doing wrong and how do we stop them doing it? It's what's being done to our kids and how do we stop these billionaires? But it requires a shift in psychology. We are not medieval peasants begging at the table of King Musk and King Zuckerberg for a few little crumbs of attention from our table. We are free people. We own our own minds. And we can take them back from these people if we want to.
Hear, hear. Thank you so much for our amazing panel, for this terrific conversation. I'm sure, I can promise on their behalf that they are happy to stay here for a little bit more and talk to you outside of the stage if you have more questions. Thank you so much for coming and paying attention, which, as we learned today, is becoming more and more difficult. Thank you.